Fios is not cable. We're wired differently, which means you can get the fastest internet available with equal upload and download speeds from 50 to 500 megs. So you can upload 200 photos before your favorite song is finished. Click the ad and switch to Fios today to get our best offer ever.
This is the Cover32 Seahawks Show.
Throw down the middle, Doug Baldwin at the 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Seahawks!
With your host, Kevin Daggett.
Cam Chancellor with the big hit.
Who else would it be but Cam?
And Lee Vowell.
Intercepted! Getting underneath it is Earl Thomas.
Just one step away from CenturyLink Field.
He scrambles upfield, he's hit, he's dropped. Michael Bennett is there to make the sack.
The official podcast of the Cover32 Seahawks website.
Thomas rolls, drags Xavier Rhodes across the goal line, and the Seahawks are on the board.
Go Hawks!
Second down and goal from the 2, no gain. Kristen Michael play fake. Little alley-oop pass to the back corner. It's Baldwin. Touchdown Seahawks, but he might have pushed off. There's a flag in the end zone. Let's see.
There's no foul for defensive.
No foul. Touchdown Seahawks. Doug Baldwin finds a way to get open. And he scores for the Hawks with 31 seconds left in the game. A 2-yard touchdown, a beauty pass lofted by Russell, and it makes the score 12-10 Seahawks.
And welcome to the Cover 32. I can't speak English. That's great, isn't it, Kevin? The Cover 32 Seahawks Show with Kevin Daggett and Lee Vowell. That's me, the guy who can't speak English. Already I'm starting. I always make fun of myself because I can't speak English during the show. Usually it happens later in the show, but it's happening immediately. So that's a bad sign for the rest of the show. But anyway, you can hear us on the Happy Hour Network live, which if you're listening live, it's on the Happy Hour Network currently right now, and on podcast at cover32.com, of course, iHeartRadio and iTunes. Today our guest will be the great Dayna O'Gorman of Fansided's Seahawks site, 12th Man Rising, and NFL Female. Wow, I'm really totally butchering this. I apologize if anybody's tuning in for the first time. I'm normally bad, but I'm not normally this bad. Steve Rivera, writer and editor of Cover32's Rams site, and of course, our weekly segment with the great Tim Weaver, managing editor of Cover32 Seahawks site. This week, Tim will be looking back at week 1 and ahead to week 2. So I am Lee. Again, I apologize for my speaking ability, and Kevin will save the show. So, Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing good, Lee. Speaking ability might not be too good today, but your writing ability is fantastic. So people need to go check your stuff out.
That's because I first learned to read today. So thank you, Kevin, for that shout out. So I appreciate that. So obviously the Seahawks won barely 12-10 over the Miami Dolphins on Sunday in a game that was closer than a lot of people thought. It was better than the way last season started off with. Obviously, last season was 0-2 the Seahawks were to start the season. Even if it's an ugly win, which it was, they still won 12-10. Of course, Russell Wilson got hurt. He got accidentally stepped on. I have to keep saying accidentally stepped on because a lot of people say, oh, Sue stepped on Wilson. It's easy to misread that into thinking Sue did something intentional. Obviously, it was totally accidental in what happened. It could have been any player besides Sue that accidentally stepped on Russell Wilson's ankle. But he got hurt, played on, obviously was not Russell Wilson-like. He couldn't move very much, didn't make a late run for a first down on that last drive. Who knows what he could have even gone for maybe more yards if he had been healthy, Russell Wilson. So, a lot of players have been talking. Cliff Averill talked about the toughness of Russell Wilson staying in the game and leading the team to victory. What was your thoughts on Russell Wilson staying in the game?
I was pretty impressed by it too. And when he first went down, and then first couple plays afterwards, I thought, man, I don't know if he's going to be back. And there was that one play where he took the snap and just stood there and threw the ball kind of sidearm, and I was like, is he not? Yep. Why is he even in the game? And then, so it seemed like he couldn't move at all. And then other plays, he moved pretty well. So and if you look at the way they taped up his ankle, it looked like he had combat boots on. I mean, there was, I don't know if his ankle was even moving, but I've had ankle injuries before playing sports, and it's very painful. It's tough to play, but I was impressed with his toughness too. And he's a leader on the team, and if he's not on the field, it's going to be a whole different squad out there. But yeah, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, it's going to be a totally different team if he's not out there. And the play you're talking about, that was fairly soon after the injury happened, and it really was a matter of he took the snap. It was basically a short throw out to the side. He didn't even bother to move, really. He just took the snap, threw it straight sideways into the ground. I was thinking, oh, man, this is bad. This is going to be really bad because not only does this affect this game, but it affects the next few weeks at least. And with the Rams coming up, the Rams played awful last night, but we know how the Rams give the Seahawks fits, and they still have a really good defensive line. Supposedly, I guess Russell Wilson's going to give it a go and go out there on Sunday and play against the Rams too. But you have any fear? Should they hold him out for this game?
Yeah, I don't know that they can afford to hold him out because who knows what Trayvon Boykin can do. I mean, I think you got to play him if he can play. Obviously, if he's too hurt to play, I don't think they will. But the Rams coming off that, whatever that was last night, and the way they play against the Seahawks all the time, and it's the home opener in L.A. I mean, there's all kinds of hype. I think you got to go into that with your best players, and I think even a hurt Russell Wilson is going to be the best option there.
Yeah, and that's one thing that concerns me. Obviously, the Rams lost; they got blown out last night, 28-0 to the 49ers, which was shocking. That not only that they lost that badly, that any team really gets shut out, but they lost that badly to the 49ers, which obviously is a team that's not world beaters or anything like that. But, Rams always give the Seahawks fits. Now they're going to be playing at home, first home game in Los Angeles since, I believe, 1754, just before the Revolution. And so, I mean, you got to worry about that, right? Because you don't know what Jeff Fisher, being honest at this point, his job might be on the line before the end of the season. So not only is he going to pull out some kind of rabbit out of the hat against the Seahawks, but now he kind of has to do it, right?
I would think so. I think his job's been in jeopardy for the past few years. At least the general public thinks his job's in jeopardy. Evidently, the people who make the decisions don't. But he probably should have been, in my opinion, should have been gone a long time ago. But I don't know what the deal is down there. But yeah, I mean, he's obviously wants to win games, and they've got a pretty solid defensive front, I thought, and they got Gurley, and so who knows? I mean, it's always a scary game when the Rams play the Seahawks.
Well, and being honest, Blaine Gabbert is obviously probably the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. So I mean, it's not really too much of a surprise that the Rams were dominated last night. So don't expect that this week, obviously. So in your opinion...
greatest quarterback behind Colin Kaepernick.
Who didn't even play. That was interesting. I mean, basically the last 3 weeks we've been talking about a backup quarterback for a team. It's really weird. So Earl Thomas obviously missed this past Sunday's game with injury. There was a player wearing his uniform. That player probably shouldn't play with the Seahawks again. What did you think about Earl Thomas's sub this Sunday?
Are you cute, Kerry Williams? Yeah, he had a heck of a game, didn't he? God, I don't know. I've never seen so many arm tackles in an NFL game in my life by one guy. I mean, it's and it was just strange to see because he is usually one of the hardest hitting safeties. He and Cam Chancellor both, and he squares people up. He doesn't arm tackle. It's like you're right. I mean, who was that guy out there? It was just whiffs left and right. But I don't know what the deal was there.
Yeah, not only the whiff, but it was more a matter of, even almost Kenny Stills normally would have made that catch, but any other receiver would have made that very long catch that would have easily been a touchdown because he was several yards away from Thomas, but that was Thomas's guy to pick up on that pattern. And he wasn't. It was like, what's going on? I mean, John Clayton pointed out, I think yesterday on 710 ESPN Seattle, that it was like, it's okay. The Seahawks won. Earl Thomas is never going to play that badly again. But it was just shocking because this guy is like, everybody else. Well, maybe not Richard Sherman even, but everybody else on the defense. He's like the foundation of the defense. You expect him every week to be Earl Thomas, and hopefully he'll turn right around, obviously, and perform at a high level. Another guy, really a couple guys, didn't perform at very high levels. Tyler Lockett dropped 2 passes. That's probably 2 more than he dropped last season. Curse dropped a pass. It was just such a weird and ugly game. So I guess you can't take a whole lot away from, week 1. Last season, obviously, the Seahawks made the playoffs. They didn't look – the defense didn't look very good against the Rams to start the season. They still made the playoffs. Had a chance against Carolina in the second half. The Rams didn't make the playoffs. In fact, they fell apart as the season went on. So, week 1, you kind of give and take. At least it's a win. So, Kevin, tell us about our wonderful guest. Not even a guest. The boss.
I was going to say, not even a guest. He's the staple of the program at this point.
We're guests on his website, basically, is what happened. So,
we got Tim Weaver. Welcome him back to the show. Tim is the editor of the Cover32 Seahawks site, and we have a weekly segment with Tim during the football season. Tim, how are you this afternoon/evening?
Hopefully Tim can hear us. Tim, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. Are you there?
I am here. Hello?
Okay. Hello, we can hear you now.
I put myself on mute somehow, but fixed now.
That's okay.
Technical difficulties. Tim, the Seahawks were struggling before Wilson got hurt, but how much did Wilson being, and Lee and I have been talking about this, he was accidentally stepped on by Sue. How much did that affect the game, him getting hurt?
Well, they won the game, so I guess it could have gone a lot worse, but it was clear that Wilson wasn't anywhere near 100%. I remember one deep drop back he had. He just stood there like a statue in the pocket, and we've never seen that from him before. He's always moving his feet. This is what the best quarterbacks do. Like the Steve Young and Aaron Rodgers, they always move their feet. They're maneuvering the pocket and looking downfield. And Wilson just stood there, so he obviously didn't have any mobility, and that's a problem. If that's going to be the case going forward, they may want to think about, keeping him on a pitch count. I don't know if you have to sit him, but it was pretty nasty. But he is what he is. He's a great competitor. He came through. I wasn't convinced once Ryan Tannehill scored the touchdown. I thought, oh, man, here we go. Another one of these early season screw-ups, a totally winnable game. But he gutted it out, and he brought him through with a game-winning drive. So you have to say hats off. But I am a little bit concerned, yeah.
Now, on the other end of things, I don't know if you have an explanation or not what happened with Earl Thomas, but he appeared to have the worst game of his Seattle career against a team that seriously is really not all that talented offensively. What the heck happened to him?
I have absolutely no idea. I've never seen him play. We will go another, what do you think? Earl Thomas plays another 8 years, 7 years, 6 years maybe. He will never play another game like that again. I think it was just an absolute fluke. He's made mistakes before. He's missed tackles. He's taken some bad angles, but just a whiffed arm tackle on Arian Foster, you would think he would never even try something like that. And then the deep ball to Kenny Stills, which should have been a touchdown, could have totally changed the whole game outcome. He was lost, but that just never happened. So I have no idea what could have possibly been going on in his head during this game. But I don't know, signal from the mothership came down, it got scrambled in transit. Usually inhumanly great football player. That week just not very good at all. I have no clue.
So just for the record, Tim does agree with us that Kerry Williams was actually playing in place of Earl Thomas this past Sunday. So, what did you think about the offensive line's performance without Ifedi? And would they have looked better with him, do you think?
I think they would absolutely look better with Ifedi. But I have to say I got a little carried away myself. This unit looked really good during the preseason. They were blocking well. Russell Wilson wasn't getting pressure up the middle. Kristen Michael had some great running lanes, and it just did not materialize at all in the Dolphins game. And part of that is in the preseason you just see really vanilla defenses. They're not going to show you their blitz packages when it doesn't count, and you're just not going to get the same level of competition that you do in September. So you have to take a little grain of salt with what we saw in August. And part of it is also just the Dolphins' defensive line is really, really good. They're maybe top 5 in the league. Even after losing Olivia Vernon to the Giants, still a really good unit. Mario Williams gave us trouble. Sue gave us trouble. Even Jason Jones, he got a cheap headshot in on Wilson. So there's just too much pressure going on there. I think that Britt did okay and Gilliam did okay, but 2 out of 5, not so good.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny because the way the game started off, it was such a weird game because, the Seahawks were ahead 6-3. They dominated time of possession, had a lot more yards, but still only 6-3. It was like an anti-Seahawks game because usually they're up 13-3 and the other team has the ball by 10 more minutes than the Seahawks do. So any other takes from the game that really stood out to you?
Well, fortunately, aside from Earl Thomas, the rest of the secondary played really, really well. Sherman was good in coverage. Jeremy Lane had a great game, which is kind of nice to see because he had a microscope on him at the national anthem protest the previous week. So a lot of people rallied back to his side, I think, after all you have to do is play well. I think you'll be popular. But the big surprise was Deshaun Shedd playing cornerback. He got the highest grade from Pro Football Focus this week. I think he only allowed 3 yards in 53 snaps, which is really, really impressive. So that was nice to see. But also a big takeaway, the defensive line looks so deep. It looks so good. Jaron Reed, in his first NFL game, defended 2 passes, slowing him down at the line of scrimmage. Michael and Bennett and Cliff Haver were really good as usual, but the depth behind them showed out very well, too. Cassius Marsh had a great game after he made a mistake early. Frank Clark was pretty disruptive. So I think you can make a case, defensive end, probably the deepest on the team right now. So I'm feeling pretty good in general there.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because the defense played so solidly throughout the game, and then they had that one drive where the Seahawks drove, I think, 140 yards in like 3 seconds. It was really weird how that happened. And, the rest of the game, as you pointed out, the defensive backs everybody was phenomenal. The linebackers were great. The defensive line was dominating. Cassius Marsh probably played the best, as the antithesis of Earl Thomas, played probably the best game of his Seahawks career. So, moving on to, I'm still going to say St. Louis at some point, but the Los Angeles Rams, they also have a good defensive line like the Dolphins did. If you were among the Seahawks brass, would you make a point of holding Wilson out due to the defensive line, or would you play him this week? And how effective do you think he will be if he does play?
That's a tough call. I don't think you can set the precedent of playing scared to say we know that this is a physical team and a dirty team and we're scared of what they're going to do to our quarterback. I don't think that you can send that message. I don't think that would help Wilson's career in the long run. But his ankle did not look good. And, Pete Carroll is, always positive about everything. He can find things to like about a rainy day. It doesn't matter if Pete Carroll's going to be positive. He may not be 1,000% forthcoming these next few days. You don't expect a coach to go out there and say, yeah, my quarterback's ankle is really taped up and he can't move around. They have to play a little bit of subterfuge here. But I'm concerned about his ankle, and we know what the Rams can do. They've beaten him up before when he was perfectly healthy and the line didn't look good. I say you have to start him and see how it goes. If it's clear he's not mobile enough to deal with the Rams' pass rush, get Boykin in there, there's no reason to risk a long-term injury over one game early in the season. I'd be comfortable punting on that if it's clear that he's really not up for the kind of running that he's likely to need to do.
Now, we all know the Rams over the last few years have played the Seahawks tough for some reason, and they've got a few victories out of that. But what do they need to do specifically this week to beat the Seahawks?
I don't know that they can. We watched the game last night. Their offense is garbage. It's just terrible. It's a Monday night game against the 49ers. It is some of the worst offensive football I've seen in the NFL in my life, ever. At what point ESPN shows this graphic that says the Rams and the 49ers have combined for 14 points and 15 punts. Well, the Niners had all 14 of those points, so what does that tell you about the Rams were doing? Case Keenum was just awful. I think he averaged like 3.7 yards per pass. They tried to just give the ball to Gurley, but he's facing 8-man fronts every time. There's nobody who can get through that. Play calling was bad. If I was running that team, I would have fired Jeff Fisher before he got off the plane, or on the plane, whatever it is. Old LA story there. But I think I think they've taken a significant step back from last season. I think they're missing Jared Cook, who was their best receiver. You saw Tavon Austin running around out there, just looked lost at times. He couldn't get open. They don't have a passing game. I think they missed James Laurinaitis and Chris Long on defense. There's a lot of brain power they lost this offseason, and I think they're going to be pretty much a dumpster fire.
Do you think they'll put a uniform on Goff this week?
No, I don't think that he's going to. I think that I'm reading a lot of today, very astute commentary on Jeff Fisher, who is just the absolute bane of the internet right now. Everyone is roasting him. That's his last card to play. If he puts Jared Goff out there now, A, he's going to have a terrible game. B, he's going to get sacked and beaten up because his offensive line is pretty bad out there, too. He's built a really good defensive line. That's something they've always done well. They have had some playmakers on the back seven in the past. I think they've lost too many of them. But there's just no offense. You could put Tom Brady in this offense, and there wouldn't be much he could do. They just don't have the personnel. And if you use Goff now, it's an admission that you failed to build around him. And they also gave up, so much to get him. I think, but I don't forget exactly how many picks it was, but it was a year and a half of draft capital that this guy is going to come out and be your franchise quarterback going forward, and he can't even get off the bench with Case Keenum out there. I think that's really embarrassing. It could set them back, not just this season, but 2 or 3 years.
Now, you talked about the Seattle defense. They played great this last against the Dolphins. It's how well are they going to have to play? I mean, a lot. Their Rams' offense is pretty. I don't know if they're going to play that crappy all year, but how well do you think the Seahawks defense is going to have to play to win this game? I mean, are they going to have to be on their game, or can Thomas have another bad game, or you think they're going to have to be playing pretty well?
I think they can play perfectly average and they'll be just fine. They don't need to play nearly as well as they did against Miami, who as tough as their offense had time moving the chains, it's a much more dynamic offense than what the Rams are running right now. They just don't have the weapons to go downfield. They don't have the personnel to really move against a good defensive team. That's not what's going to decide the game. What will decide the game is how well Russell Wilson can move, and if Darrell Bevell can figure out some kind of way to not get him killed, which I don't have total confidence in. That's where the game will always be decided. We know that the Rams and the Seahawks are going to play tough defense. It's probably going to be low scoring. There's going to be some penalties. There's going to be some controversy. What it will come down to is how well the Seahawks offense can execute, I think.
Yeah, all in all, I don't think it was a really stellar showing for the NFC West this weekend. But, Tim, we appreciate you being on. And, again, we'll talk to you next week, same time, same place. Can you let people know, remind people where you can be found on social media?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at TimWeaver84.
All right, Tim. Thanks very much, and have a good week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. You too, guys.
Thanks.
So, Kevin, I got to ask, I have several Dolphins fans, which is strange. And I had one friend who's a Dolphins fan who just hated what the Dolphins did during the national anthem, especially compared to what the Seahawks did. And it was a lot of pre-game publicity over what the Seahawks might do as a team. But they ended up arm in arm, standing up for the national anthem. And then a friend of mine, his name's Eric, he actually stated after the game, not just because of that, but because of the way the Dolphins have been running things lately, that he was, and he grew up, he's our age, and he grew up a Dolphins fan, but he's willing to look for another team just based on everything. And it was almost like the final straw was the national anthem. So what did you think, not about what the Dolphins did, but what did you think about the way the Seahawks went about the national anthem on Sunday?
Well, to be honest with you, when I first heard they were going to do something, I was thinking, oh, what kind of stunt are they going to pull? And my wife even said, she goes, before I even found out what it was, she goes, I'm changing teams. I'm done with these guys, blah, 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 if they're going to sit. And I was like, let's just hold on. Let's see what they're going to do. I thought it was really cool. I mean, it was hey, let's unify this deal. It isn't, and I think the issue that how it all got started with what Kaepernick was trying to do is, I mean, it is a divisive issue. So I think what the Seahawks did in their unification was a good gesture, and I think I'm not so the sitting for the national anthem. I mean, you like we've talked about before, you can do what you want to do. I don't like that. The kneeling, I don't think is so bad. I think the Dolphins kneeling looked worse because of what the Seahawks were doing on the other side of the field. It was kind of like the Seahawks are trying to make a motion to let's unify this thing. Let's show that we're unified and move forward and make some progress. And then the Dolphins guys are still kind of going with what they're doing. I think it looked worse because of that. But do what you want to do. Guys are going to do what they want to do. I'm just waiting for high school students to start sitting for the national anthem, and when that's going to happen, because somebody's going to do that.
I'm sure it's happened already. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think what the Dolphins did, it did look worse compared to what the Seahawks players did, and it was, the kneeling. Again, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with really what anybody does. It's, if their point is not to be, anti-patriotic. It's to make a stand on whatever they're doing. But it looked much worse, and it was almost like obviously Doug Baldwin is behind a lot of this, and I don't know if he is like a genius in PR or something like that, but it was almost like the PR department of the Seahawks. It's like that was the perfect thing you could have done, because not only were they not sitting, but they showed unification because all the players were involved in the same thing. So it wasn't like, well, some of these players feel one way and the other players, and it wasn't that the players felt differently. It's that they got together before the game and decided this is what we're going to do. So it was like a consensus of what happened, because some players were like, oh, we're going to kneel. And then some other players, of course, who had families with close ties to the military, they were like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. We should stand up. And then the way they handled it was like perfect. Of course, they had the huge American flag on the field as well, which made the Dolphins players look even worse, and they actually looked a little bit lost. I think that was part of the problem. And you have this strong team, but still, now that this team is actually going to be led by, Jake Heaps at quarterback. Now that Jake Heaps has been re-signed to the practice squad. No, I mean, moving on from the anthem before we're joined by Dayna Gorman of 12th Man Rising and NFL Female in just a minute. Your thoughts on some of the Seahawks moves that they've made today specifically, like Jake Heaps coming back to the practice squad. Do you think they're just kind of hiding the fact they're afraid that Russell Wilson, even if he does play, may not be able to go the entire game, and Boykin's going to come in? They don't have a third quarterback on the roster, as far as I know, correct? Because Heaps was waived, and now he's part of the practice squad. Tavares Jackson's still out there. They haven't brought him back. But do you have a fear of just having – I don't know how the practice squad works. You can't bring somebody like up from the minors that game. I don't know if they have to make them active or what, but obviously, I guess, even if they've signed him to the practice squad, there's still that feeling Wilson's going to play and Boykin's going to be the backup. But what happens if Wilson can't really go that long and then you only have Boykin? I mean, where does that go from there?
Well, if you recall, John Ryan had a pretty good, preseason and had a couple shots last year. I'm still holding out for John Kitna, you know me, but I think they had to make some move at quarterback. If even if Wilson's not hurt as bad as some of the reports are, I think you still have to pad that spot a little bit. I would imagine they're probably even talking to some teams about or talking to some veteran quarterbacks. I would imagine. I think that's just the smart thing to do, because even if his ankle isn't injured as bad as it's being reported, it's still injured. And if he twists it in practice or does something else, what are you going to do? So I would imagine that they're out there talking to some other. I hope they're not talking about Mark Sanchez. I might switch teams if that's the case.
Yeah, I would hope it wouldn't be Mark Sanchez. I mean, Michael Vick, I don't know what you'd do in this case, but hopefully, I guess my only thought with keeping Wilson out of the game against the Rams isn't the fear of what the Rams would do against Russell Wilson. It's more that it doesn't matter who they're playing, really. To me, it's like if his ankle is injured enough where it's not really worth the risk of a week 2 game after you've won week 1, then, it's okay with the back. Even if they were playing, the Browns, for instance. It's, to me, isn't not scared. It's a matter of thinking long term. What happens if Wilson goes out there and his ankle gets even more injured, for instance? I mean, is it really worth it against the Rams or anybody else in week 2? So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on the situation. And if Boykin were to play, I guess it's not the end of the world if he were to get that experience against the Rams. I mean, hopefully they would run it so conservatively and with the run game and allowing on the defense to win the game. As Tim mentioned, I mean, the defense alone should be good enough to beat this Rams team. I mean, the first points they score next week will be the first points of their season so far, and they looked, as he pointed out, awful against the 49ers in week 1. It was just crazy how bad it was. I didn't watch any of that game yet. I woke up this morning and I was thinking, well, I'm sure the Rams beat the 49ers, and I kind of blurry-eyed looked at the score to see that it was 28-0 49ers, and I was like, what happened? What am I looking at? What happened in this game? Something must have, but the 49ers just beat them. So I don't know if you were able to see any of it, but how shocked were you by that score?
I watched a little bit of it, and I was pretty shocked because I don't think the 49ers are all that good. And I thought the Rams were better than the 49ers, and so and then the Cardinals lose to the Tom Brady-less Patriots. The Seahawks barely win over the Dolphins. I'm like, what? This NFC West, but if you look at it, the whole, almost every game in this first week of the NFL season was a little weird. There was some really tight games, a field goal here, a missed catch here. It's almost like it's a real weird first week for. Was there any, besides the Rams game, I guess, many blowouts, but it was a weird first week for the NFL, and it was a very weird first week for college football a couple weeks ago. So I don't know what the deal is. If this is the way it's going to go, it's going to be a fun football season all the way around, pros and college. I mean, if we got nail biters like this, and people, you got Jack Del Rio going for 2 at the end of the game. I'm like, dude, he wants to win. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy, but you know who's not crazy? Dayna O'Gorman. So we now welcome Dayna O'Gorman to the show. Dayna's been on with us several times, always fantastic. She is a Seahawks reporter for NFL Female and writes for 12th Man Rising. Dayna's not on with us enough. So Dayna, thanks for being on. How are you this evening?
I am doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's an honor for us. So what are your first reactions to the Seahawks-Dolphins game?
Well, let me start by saying I'm in my car, so I apologize if it's not super clear on the phone.
You
but,
sound great,
actually.
It's perfectly clear.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. The Seahawks-Dolphins game, there was some surprise in that game and then some things that weren't so surprising. Now, I'm a big believer in never taking any game for granted. You can think that you're just going to be handed a game on a platter, but this is the NFL. That is not how it works. And so I never took this team lightly. Plus, we have to realize as Seahawks fans that teams look at us as a very big game. And if they were to beat us, what that would do for their season. And so teams always come to play without question. I will tell you, I was thrilled with the defense. Oh, the defense. It looked like a defense from a couple years ago. It was so exciting, and I loved every minute of it. The offense, well, we start a little slow on offense sometimes. But all in all, I was pretty happy with what I saw, other than a twisted ankle of my favorite quarterback.
Yeah, I think that worried us all. So, but they barely won 12-10. You think week one was a misnomer, or, for instance, Earl Thomas was really bad, especially for Earl Thomas, but really for anybody. But Tyler Lockett dropped 2 passes. Of course, Seattle dominated time of possession. They don't normally do that. Or do you think this week will be more indicative of the rest of the season?
A little bit of both, to be quite honest with you. And I know that sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, and sorry about that, but really it is a little bit of both. I was very surprised at Earl Thomas's play. I will say that there seemed to be a few people missing practice over the last few weeks due to illness. So honestly, I was wondering to myself if maybe he wasn't 100%, because it just seemed so odd for Earl. He just was missing tackles that he never misses. And so we haven't heard anything about it. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he was not 100%, because I think he deserves that benefit of the doubt at this point. Tyler Lockett looked nervous to me. I don't know if there's been a lot of hype about Tyler Lockett this season, off season, and in preseason, and, it's his year and he's going to stand out and he's going to be the best. And I'm wondering if maybe that got to him a little bit. I mean, he's just a kid, guys, and so maybe that's what it was. I don't think that we will see, I don't think that his performance is indicative of how he'll play the rest of the season. I think he'll settle in much like our offense usually does, and we'll kind of go from there. I think that we did just, quote unquote, barely win, but we still won with a very injured quarterback and an offense that looked a little iffy. So, I'm not going to read too much into it.
One guy that did not have a bad game is Cassius Marsh. That guy played out of his mind. Do you think he's finally become a player Seattle can rely on week to week?
Well, the first play didn't go so well for him, but then after that, he really did kind of make up for it, and make up for it he did. Oh my gosh, that block field goal was poetic. It was exactly what we needed at that moment. I think the Seahawks fans were really, feeling pretty down, and that just kind of revived the whole team, and I give him full credit for that because that was fantastic. But I do think that he's coming into his own. I think that he's finally getting his feet underneath him, really grasping the system. A lot of analysts will say that from year 1 to year 2 is the biggest jump that a player will make, but I don't know that I always agree with that. Some players, it takes a couple of seasons to really settle in and feel like you know your position, you own your position, and you get really good at it.
Now, if one were a Seahawks fan, and I think we all are, and people listening to this show are fans, what would be your biggest concerns going into the Rams game next week?
Russell Wilson. I really do. We can, we always say, in Pete we trust. And I trust that Pete Carroll really thinks Russell Wilson will be fine. I don't know how fine Russell Wilson really is. It looked like a pretty serious injury. I know he's walking around without a boot, and we can rah him up all the time because Russell Wilson doesn't like to miss practice. He doesn't like to miss games. But I'm still a little nervous of him being slightly off kilter because as horrific as that Rams game was last night, I don't think that is how they're going to play us in any way, shape, or form. Can't say anything for their offense because that was a complete and total disaster for the Rams. But that defense is still the Rams' defense. And so that is my biggest worry, is how that line will stand up to that defensive line and Errol Donald for sure, and then to see how Russell, because I just don't know that he'll have the mobility that we've come to expect from him. The addition of Will Tuguafu today, I think, is a huge help. I think that, fingers crossed, we might be able to get Effetti back, but that's my biggest question mark still is going to be the mobility of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and Jimmy Graham and Thomas Rawls are expected to play bigger roles in Week 2 than they did even though they played, they didn't play big roles in Week 1.
Sure.
Do you think that's definitely going to help the Seahawks produce more points, and what can they do specifically to really help the Seahawks offense?
I'm not usually a big fan of this running back by committee. We've been spoiled as Seahawks fans. We have had Marshawn Lynch forever. He was all we needed because he just was. He was fantastic. He was all we needed. But watching this first game, I really liked the play, the different types of play between Christine Michael and Thomas Rawls. Now, of course, we saw more of Michael. We all expected that. But with the addition of Rawls coming in, I think that 1-2 punch actually really might work, and it really might help. Where it's going to probably help the most is if Russell Wilson still has some mobility issues, because you'll see a huge increase in the running game. I mean, Russell Wilson threw, more passes than he ever has in his career in that last game, and I don't expect that to be the norm. So I think with Rawls coming back, they're really going to be able to, help us get through that particular moment of question mark with Russell Wilson. Jimmy Graham, I was surprised to see him in this game. I didn't expect him. I thought they might make him active, and I know they said they were going to play him, but I didn't really think that they would use him. So when he started making those couple of catches, I was impressed and excited for that. What Jimmy Graham brings to this team has been the same since the day we picked him up. He brings height, he brings speed, he brings, that big, huge target for Russell Wilson to feed to. Once toward the end of that last season, before he got hurt, he was really starting to fill that role well. We know it was a little rocky at the beginning of last year. But I really think that now, with the chemistry they built up, they will get what we expected to get out of Jimmy Graham all last season.
Yeah, and it's weird because he had that big catch on the final drive, like Baldwin had 3 catches, and it was almost like we were waiting for the entire game to be like, this is what we saw, last season, and it finally clicked.
Yeah, and it just took him till the fourth quarter to do it.
He had a very last drive, basically. So, you're kind of in that former Rams area. How are the fans reacting to, or do they even care about the Rams?
Well, it's interesting. I'm in Kansas City, but there were actually Rams fans here in KC, a ton in St. Louis that I actually know, and there's a mixed bag there. The few Rams fans that I know bailed. They're Kansas City Chiefs or Chicago Bears fans now. They did not stick with this team. They felt completely betrayed by their team, and so they got rid of their stuff. They have moved on to other teams. I think that there is still a fan base there, just because it's hard to give up on your team that you've loved for so long. It's hard for you to just write them off, no matter how badly you were treated. Because let's be honest, those fans were treated pretty badly. But at the same time, I think that definitely enough dissension among the ranks that the St. Louis Rams crowd is much thinner at this point.
And the Rams always seem to give the Seahawks a difficult time, no matter if children are playing for the Rams. Why do you think this is?
Well, I always say that this is Jeff Fisher's Super Bowl. He can be the 7-9 coach that he is, but he manages to figure out how to beat Pete Carroll. And for some reason, that is what he strives to do. Now, I'm not saying it's conscious in his head that he says, well, we'll dump the rest of the season, but as long as they beat Pete. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it really seems that team gets up for this game. Watching the game last night, I don't know that offense can get up enough for this upcoming game. I had written this game off as a loss. I always do when we play the Rams at their home. I always write it off as a loss, and then am surprised if we win because of how Jeff Fisher plays Seattle. But I'm not as concerned after watching last night's game against the 49ers, but I still think that defense is that defense. I mean, yeah, they had a bad night, but I'm telling you, I promise you, it will get better for the Rams. And so I think that for some reason these two coaches know each other very well. They know each other's scheming very well. Jeff Fisher loves trick plays, and we know that. And I think that he just really focuses on this game probably more than any other.
Dayna, I'd love to sit here and talk trash with you about how well my Sounders are doing this year, but I just it's just not in the cards. They're barely scoring one goal a game. But besides 14 points, what separates an FC Dallas from Sporting KC this year? And do you think Sporting KC is going to be able to make a run at it again this year?
Oh, well, after last weekend's game, no, I don't. And it's funny you say that, as I am in a car driving out to Sporting Park as we speak for a CONCACAF game. But, here's the thing. Sporting Kansas City's biggest issue and their biggest difference with Dallas is consistency. We have one game where we look fantastic. They have another game where they look like they shouldn't even be on the field. And, yes, Sporting has been plagued with injuries, but you know what? That's kind of the way it is across the board. So you don't give too much credit for just having some injuries. But, I do think that Sporting will make the playoffs. Do I think that they'll go much further than that? I don't know, to be honest with you. I've kind of resigned myself this season. But I do think that they will manage to make the playoffs. And I am sorry about your Sounders this year. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I wish I could even think that my Sounders are going to make the playoffs. I'll be happy if they don't end up in the 8th spot in the West.
Yeah, yeah, and and it's heartbreaking about Clint Dempsey, and I wish the best for him, and hope everything turns out well there. But my son is a huge Sounders fan, and so we talk about this quite a bit, and he just says this will teach them to not put all their eggs in one basket. So hopefully next year will be much better for you guys.
Yeah, let's hope so. But, well, Dayna, we thank you for being on again, and hopefully we can get you on later on in the season. And can you let people know where they can read your stuff and find you on social media?
Absolutely. So you can always find me at NFLfemale.com. I am the Seahawks official fan reporter for them. And I also host their weekly podcast, Wednesday Night with NFL Female, which is on Spreaker every Wednesday night. We put that out. And then 12th Man Rising, part of the Fan-Sided Club. I have a great time with Keith and the boys over there. It's a great website. And then you can always find me on Twitter. It's at Dayna OG. Very easy to find. And, guys, I would love to come on anytime. You guys are fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very, very much for being on. Yeah, enjoy the game.
Oh, thanks. Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So, one injury we have not discussed, Kevin, is C.J. Prosciut's injury, where he maybe sprained his wrist. Of course, he had a cast on, but I think he's a very important part of the team going forward as well, because he gives the team, not only can he carry the ball, he's a big guy and he can catch the ball. How much do you think that affects what the team wants to do moving forward?
I think it's going to affect him a lot, because he seems to be he's going to be the third down running back, replacing Fred Jackson, and that's a role. That is a definite role player. I think every team has that guy, and so to bring him in and do. And I tell you what, I think I mentioned this to you. It is still very weird for me to not see Robert Turbin in that number 22 on the field for the Seahawks. It's really kind of weird to see that. Somebody in no, that's not Turbo. Oh man, but he's playing for the Colts now. But I think we'll see. Hopefully it's not too serious of an injury, and we'll get back in it. And who knows? Maybe Alex Collins will get some work. But
yeah, absolutely. Also, besides the Wilson to Baldwin play, this happened
at the 9-yard line. The shotgun snap. Tannehill awaits. He gets it. 4-man rush. He goes down in the end zone. The ball game is over. Cliff Averill. Here is John Hussey.
Clock expired. The game is over.
The game is over, and the Seahawks have found yet again a way to win as Cliff Averill came off the end of the line of scrimmage. I don't know, and I don't care if he gets credit for the sack.
So it's always funny to me when Rabel loses his voice, because he gets so excited, about the game. So it's always nice to hear. So anyway, I thought the last, there was that one play where the Dolphins they threw it downfield, and I was a little bit nervous that they were actually going to make a play. But after that, with Marsh and Averill, it felt like the Seahawks of 2013 and 14, didn't it, to you?
Yeah, as everybody's mentioned tonight, the defense just seems so solid, and Deshaun Shedd, that guy, what a step up in that position from last year. I mean, they struggled last year at that position, and Jeremy Lane had a great game too. I mean, he made some pretty good tackles and knocked a couple passes down. It's like the defensive backfield is back where it used to be, and also I agree with everybody too. Earl Thomas had a bad game. So what? Thank goodness he had a bad game when everything else was going right. It was against the Dolphins, and I wouldn't expect him to do that again. And the sickness thing, he might have been. It was almost like he was a step off. So just a step behind, and that could be an illness. If you're not feeling well, you're just a half a step or a step behind. But I was impressed with that defense. I think they do remind me of that Super Bowl team last year. And I mean they did struggle some. They're trying to find people to put in positions, but I think they got it together now, and hopefully they can keep it together and keep low on injuries.
Yeah. Well, one guy who has it together, Steve Rivera of Cover32's Rams site. Do you want to tell us a little bit about our next guest, Kevin?
Yeah, Steve is the editor and writer of Cover32's Rams site. Welcome to the show, Steve, and thanks for being on.
Thanks. It's a lot. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I was trying to think of a question that you probably have not been asked today, and it really comes down to, well, what the heck happened last night?
Well, I think you and everyone in the greater Los Angeles area is asking that same question. I think one of the problems for the Rams, if you're a fan or if you're just someone who watches them, is, offensively, that is a team that is very unimaginative and doesn't seem to have a direction outside of handing the ball off to Todd Gurley and hoping he'll get you a first down every time. If that's what they're looking for 16 games, I think it's going to be a really long season there in LA.
Yeah, and that's kind of my next question. Does last night really even matter? I mean, it's a 16-game season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Are people concerned? They say, well, they just had a bad game and we'll move on.
Yeah, I think they will be. I don't know how much you watched a lot of the Hard Knocks stuff. I thought it was really great because it gave us some insight into kind of how Jeff Fisher runs his show there. And, again, that's a team that has what looks to be a really great defensive team as they've had. Offensively, if they can't get anything going, and you get a team who puts up 28 points, that defense gets stuck on the field long. That's a Rams team that just isn't going to win a lot of games.
Fisher's taken a lot. He's taken a lot of flack over the years because his team, they do all right. They seem to have average records, but they stay competitive. What do you think about Fisher as a coach, and do you think he's got a pretty short shelf life in LA, or are they going to keep him on?
No, actually, I think he's got a really long shelf life in Los Angeles. There was a really great article about Stan Kroenke that ran in a publication in the UK during the summer. He has a soccer team, and I apologize, we're off the top of my head. I can't recall what the name of that team is. It's Arsenal, actually. He's not a guy who moves quick to make any sort of personnel moves. I think Fisher will probably get an extension, him and Snead, whether it's 1+1 or 1+2, whether they're going to be the actual group of guys who takes LA into the facility there at Inglewood remains to be seen. But one of the things about Jeff Fisher is, for better or for worse, that's a guy who has time on his side. I think the reason why Goff is on the sideline and probably won't see the season this year, or there's not a reason to get him on the field, is because Jeff Fisher knows that he's got at least 2016, possibly 2017, to kind of work stuff out. I think Case Keenum is a guy that he likes. He liked him going back to March when he said that he would be the Rams starter. Jeff Fisher isn't going anywhere. At least I don't think so. I don't think Rams fans have a lot of choice in that. He's a guy who's going to be there at least for this season and next season also.
Yeah, and Todd Gurley didn't have his best game last night, but we all know Todd Gurley can be a great running back in this league. Where would you rank Todd Gurley on the list of best backs in the NFL currently, and why?
You know, I like Gurley. One of the things, if you go back to last year, he's a guy who might have a couple of games where he'll get you 47 yards a game, 50 yards a game, then all of a sudden he'll go off. He'll get you 150 yards. He'll have a big game for you. Last night, I don't think is really indicative of Todd Gurley. I think it's more indicative of what the Rams do offensively. Listen, Gurley's a great back. He's young. My biggest concern, given how that offense is constructed in L.A., is that he's going to get so much work. A guy who's had injury issues at Georgia. Last year, he didn't even start the season for the Rams. He was injured last year. He's a guy that I think if his workload gets really heavy, he might be on the sidelines. As much as I like Todd, like Gurley, I think he's a guy that if he's not managed right, if he gets way too much work later on in the season, he's going to become a liability on that Rams team.
And, you know, why do the Rams always seem to either win or make it very difficult for the Seahawks? It doesn't seem to matter who's on whose team. Is the Rams just give the Seahawks fits?
Yeah, you know what? I think if you looked at how they played San Francisco last night, how they played Seattle last year, I don't know if last night is a really good indication of what this Rams team is. I don't think the Rams are as bad as a 28-0 loss last night. I think they're somewhere in between. They're not a team who can give up a lot of points and look to actually win a game. Seattle's a great team defensively. I think when the Rams have the game that they want to have, the Rams are a great team defensively also. Why they give Seattle fits is beyond me. You know, the Rams are a team who will play a team like Seattle or Arizona really tough. They'll give up an easy win, at least in my estimation, like they did last night. I thought San Francisco was a game that they probably should have won. Looking forward to games against Seattle and Arizona. Jeff Fisher is such a riddle. Those are games that I would pencil the Rams to actually win. Games last night where you would actually think that they would win, they'll actually give you a loss. As to why they play Seattle tough, I don't even think Jeff Fisher could probably answer that.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't think the Rams are as bad as they played last night. I certainly expected them to beat the 49ers. What are some of your biggest reasons for concerns for the Rams versus the Seahawks this weekend?
Yeah, I think for the Rams to do well, they have to have a game that is almost like a soccer game. To be honest with you, they have to keep the game low scoring-wise. I think the Rams are a good team when they keep the opposing offense to 13 points, 14 points. The Rams just aren't built to come back from a deficit, and they're not a team who's going to go out and get out in front of you early. The Rams are going to win ugly football games. If you ask me, and I've written this a couple times, I compare them to a Big Ten team back in the 1990s, 3 yards and a cloud of dust. If Gurley's going and he can pick up a couple of first downs on the ground, Case Keenum doesn't give up turnovers like he did last night, even though one was a tip ball. The Rams are in really, really good shape. The Rams aren't a team who's going to go out and beat you on the actual scoreboard. I think that they're a team who's built to play 60 minutes of football, and they got to keep you under probably a couple of touchdowns to win a game.
And Steve, how have the fans and just the public in general down in Los Angeles, how have they received the Rams coming back to Los Angeles?
Well, they love it there. I think if the Rams have any problem, it's the fact that they're hampered by competition in their own local market. Even though the USC Trojans aren't a particularly good football team right now, UCLA is good. I love Southern California. That's a town that has a lot going on. I think that honeymoon lasts for, I think, this season. The Rams will do well this year. The problem is that if the Rams start losing and 9-7 becomes kind of an expectation, that Coliseum gets really empty very, very quickly. I've been in that stadium for USC games. When it is under 40, 50,000, it's like a mausoleum. And that's not a place where you want to play an NFL game. I think that the Rams will be okay this season. The Rams don't have to be great this year. I think that if they can be an optimistic 7-9, I think 500 would be a gift. The fan base there is okay. I think Kroenke is banking on the property in Inglewood to keep the fan base interested. Fisher doesn't have to win right now, but he's got to have a team on the field that is looking to win in the future. If he does that, I think that Fisher will be okay. I think the fan base there will be okay. But again, when you're that Rams team is a real interesting team to watch because they don't have to win. They just got to be competitive on the field. Fisher's got to be looking at getting something done. He's got to go off on the sidelines. That was a mistake, if you ask me. But that's again, they're interesting because Jeff Fisher has the benefit of time, and that's something that a lot of NFL coaches who lose don't have. For some reason, in LA, he has it.
Well, let's hope as Seahawks fans that they don't get too good too soon. But it is nice to have a football team back in Los Angeles. I'm gonna put you on the spot, Steve. What is your prediction for the outcome of the game this weekend?
I was interested that Russell Wilson has got that ankle injury. If he plays, if you look at how Seattle played this week and how the Rams played this week, I think whoever gets the 14 points wins the game, and that I think plays into the Rams' favor. I think that the Rams do well when they're playing some ugly football. I think the fact that they're going to be playing in L.A. this week helps them out a lot. I think Gurley has a better game. I don't think that what you saw last night is Rams football. They're not as bad as 28-0. I don't know how much better they are beyond that, to be perfectly honest with you. I think this week is a close game. I would not be surprised to see the Rams win a game 14-13, 17-14 in that area. The Rams get on the board this week, but I really believe they get a W.
Well, Steve, we appreciate you being on. And can you let people know where you can be found on social media and they can read your articles?
Yeah, actually, I'm at Cover32 /Rams. I'm on there, and I do a lot of tweeting on that side, especially during games. We had a lot of fun last night. Cover32 /Rams. You'll find me, a lot of my postings there, a lot of stuff that I write. It's a lot of fun.
All right, Steve, thank you for being on. Hopefully we'll catch up again, before the second game if you can make it. Be great to talk to you then.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So that's our show, Kevin. It's a fairly short show compared to how we have been. So our next show, of course, will be next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have Tim Weaver on and a couple of other guests, hopefully. As always, at least the Seahawks won, but Kevin has the final words.
Go Hawks.
Second down and goal from the 2, no gain. Kristen Michael play fake. Little alley-oop pass to the back corner. It's Baldwin. Touchdown Seahawks, but he might have pushed off. There's a flag in the end zone. Let's see.
There's no foul for defensive.
No foul. Touchdown Seahawks. Doug Baldwin finds a way to get open. And he scores for the Hawks with 31 seconds left in the game. A 2-yard touchdown, a beauty pass lofted by Russell, and it makes the score 12-10 Seahawks.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can seem intense. Like breakup R&B intense.
I thought you said you loved the sweater that I got you. If you didn't, you could have told me.
Geico makes it easy. Just go to Geico.com anytime to update or check your policy without all the extra drama.
I even had a gift receipt.
Hi, I'm Paul. I used to ask if you could hear me now with Verizon, but I switched to Sprint. They changed the game again with unlimited freedom. Unlimited mobile optimized streaming videos, gaming, music, and data for $60 a month. Can you hear that? Visit sprint.com/freedom today.
Coverage and offer not everywhere for discounted phones, subject to credit and $30 activation fee. Excludes taxes, surcharges, roaming, and premium content. Streaming may be mobile optimized with video up to 480p and music up to 500 kilobytes per second. Games limited up to 2 megabytes per second. Prohibited network use rules apply and data deprioritization during congestion. Reliability claim based on third-party data restrictions apply.